Welcome to the Game and Gadget podcast. Hello, I'm James Woodcock from Pixel Refresh, and today I have with me, of course, co-host Tony Warriner. And I won't bother with all the flattering introductions. He's the co-founder of Revolution Software, and he's done among many other things as well. Thank you for joining me again today, Tony.
You're very welcome, James. How are you?
Very well, but I think I've got a little bit more money in the pocket than you have right now because you've been spending.
Yeah. Well, I haven't actually spent it yet. It's pending processing. But yeah. Oh, actually, it's gone to manufacturer. So yeah. Maybe they've taken the money now. Yeah, it's my new MacBook Pro.
His new MacBook Pro. Okay, so these were announced very recently. Let's rewind. Were you waiting for this announcement and thought, I'm possibly going to get one of these, or was it just you saw it and you had to have it?
Well, that's what usually one of those two things is always what happens. But I was planning. I mean, we knew if you follow the Apple rumor stuff, I'm a big Daring Fireball fan, and I read Mac rumors and all that stuff. So I knew something was coming, and what I thought it was what we expected was a new Mac Mini alongside these MacBook Pros. The Mac Mini kind of looked like a good bet because you get more ports on the back of it, and the expectation is that the insides will be pretty much the same as the MacBook Pros. So I was kind of going. I'd kind of decided. We kept even on the day. I was talking to my missus down at the coffee place about which one I should get, and we kind of thought Mac Mini was the best one. But then there was no Mac Mini, so by this point you're hyped to spend money big on the latest thing, and the machines they did talk about were pretty epic. So it's a transformational machine. The performance and the spec and everything, it's out of this world. So there's no way I was going to go, oh well, I'll wait for an undetermined amount of time for the Mini to appear. It could be next year. It could be 6 months away. So it was suddenly the MacBook Pro made a whole lot of sense, and get that order in as soon as possible.
So I think Apple can finally actually say they have a Pro laptop, and I think anyone who's been following the Apple space for laptops over the last number of years now, it's not just a couple of years, for a number of years, there's been introductions and things taken away from the MacBook Pro, which has upset a lot of professionals, and I was one of them. Now, I had no intention of buying a new MacBook Pro, but if I was, I would have been put off by the fact of they removed HDMI, the SD card reader are gone, they got rid of MagSafe, the touch bar I tried on a friend, and although, granted, I didn't spend hours with the thing, it was like, I prefer real keys. I mean, okay, it's nice certain apps can have different functionality by using the touch bar, but it wasn't like this was the must-have thing that made this a professional device. And it was just a combination of things. But now, Apple have gone back to their Pro roots of a device that I first purchased in 2013.
Yeah, I mean, they made big misstep, 5 years ago, whenever it was. I mean, I think there was two things going on. I think it was Johnny Ive's kind of aesthetic thing, whereby, the smaller machine with the just the lines down. I think he was looking at the lines down the side of it, not having ports, because you don't want ports, it's because they're ugly, I think there was some weird thing like that going on, which obviously isn't there anymore, because he's departed now. But I also think they took a big bet on USB-C being something that would come in very quickly and eclipse everything. And that isn't really the case. I mean, I've still got stuff that's USB. I mean, yeah, I've still got stuff that's USB-A, do they call it? The old style, big fat things, I mean, this microphone I'm using now, my lovely pink microphone, is a USB-A connector on the end of it. So, and still these things are still around, and I mean, if I was buying some new thing, I'd probably make sure it was USB-C, because USB-C is pretty nice, The thing about USB-A is I've never ever once tried to plug one in and got it the right way up the first time. It's always the other side. Yeah, you've always got to turn it over. So you can go, right, I'm just about to do it this way, but the rule is it's always the wrong way. So turn it over and plug, and oh no, it's the wrong way. It's the right the first time. I mean, I've never done it right, not once in my life. So I quite like USB-C, But when I bought the last machine, I mean, this MacBook Pro I'm sat using now, which I'm going to sell in about 2 weeks' time. And it is one of the machines with the touch bar and no ports and stuff. But the thing is, much of that didn't look like a problem at the time, because what I had was what I bought was a fancy 5K LG monitor to use with it. And the beauty of that was that you put the right USB cable in it. And I can't remember that. No one understands USB-C cables. There's like 7 different sorts, isn't there? Like whatever they are. But you buy the expensive black cable, which came with it came with this 5K LG thing that Apple was selling at the time. And all you had to do was plug the MacBook Pro via this USB-C lead into the monitor. And not only did it your 5K display go up the USB-C lead, but it also charged the Mac down the thing. So you were never the idea was you were not going to be plugging it into the power anyway. So you had this kind of super minimalist vibe going on, whereby there wasn't any ports on it, but there wasn't any wires plugged into it either. So it in theory, that looks like a pretty good bet. And then, you can buy a dongle for the odd USB-A. So that looked all right. And it never did really inconvenience me all that much. But that touch bar thing, I mean, what I didn't spot was, this is my mistake with it, I didn't spot there was no escape key. I hadn't figured that one out until it was too late. Because the touch bar, you can go, oh well, it's just a gimmick, and they'll give up on that, and maybe it'll be great to change the brightness using the swipey thing. I mean, obviously it was rubbish, but we were just going to have to live with that. Function keys, you don't use them all that much, but the no escape key thing, suddenly that hit me like really bad, because I suddenly realized I use escape key all the time, programming and stuff, and running apps, and I don't know what it is, but I don't know when I use it, but I use it all the time. And suddenly, I mean, it's even worse on this touch bar thing, because it's offset. It's not even where there's a virtual escape key, but it's offset to the right. Where is it? Yeah, look at it. It's like an inch to the right. It's absolutely awful. And so suddenly you're trying to press escape, and you have to do this thing. You're doing it really. So then I spent ages trying to remap the escape key to that. There's another button next to the one key, and the actual top left button. It's a weird symbol. This is the other stupid thing. There's a button there. The top left real button is like 2 symbols that you've never pressed in your entire life, right? I mean, what are they? It's just like 2 squiggles, a plus minus, and some weird squiggle thing. Like, that is a key on this Mac that has never been pressed, not once. And above it, to the right, is a virtual escape key that you need to use all the time, that you can't use anymore because it's a nightmare. So that was, so suddenly I was having to buy a keyboard, like another keyboard, to try and. So I bought one of those fancy black Super Ace Apple keyboards.
God blimey.
150 quid.
Oh.
150 quid. Because I wanted the black one.
Of course. To match the
Which they
keyboard
just
on the
brought
laptop itself.
Well, no, it was just cooler than the old white ones. And they were charging like 20 quid more for it. But, once this is the thing about Apple, you're going, well, I'm paying 130 for one of their keyboards, so what's another 20 quid?
Oh wow. Okay, so
but even sadder than that, like a year later, I realized I couldn't really type properly on that one either. So that's now in a drawer somewhere, and I use a Keychron K2, which has changed my life because it's so good
and has an escape key.
It does, yeah, and it glows orange as well.
It glows orange. That sounds very important. What, just the escape key or the whole thing?
Oh well, all of the keys glow, and it does little patterns, and it's got different modes.
It's RGB.
It's got all sorts of. It's got LEDs under each key, but the escape key is actually translucent orange. The whole key, so it glows extra special.
It sounds like the perfect keyboard for you.
Maximum escape. Yeah.
Yes. There is no escape, and that is the touch bar. Okay, so what spec did you go for in the end? I mean, this is a Pro not just in terms of features and hardware and power, it really is a Pro in terms of price as well. If you were thinking back to MacBook Pro with just the standard M1 chip, this isn't it. This is something else. So, Tony, what spec did you go for?
Well, I went for the 14-inch one. Because I'm going to be using it with the monitor, but when I need it as a laptop, the smaller it is, the better, I suppose. And people were saying that a lot of people I know use 13-inch MacBooks, so and they all reckon Unity and stuff's okay on that. So smaller seem like the one to go for, as given everything else is the same inside it, more or less. Apart from some weird differences on the charging, but no one quite understands what that is. So yeah, 32 gigs of memory, and of course the unified memory. So I guess the screen takes a little chunk of that off. So, but 32 should be fine. What else? Yeah, what terabyte SSD looks about right, and a Max chip.
Oh, so you didn't even go. So there's two new chips that's come along with these.
Yeah.
There's the Pro, and then there is the Max, and you've literally gone for the Max.
Well,
wow.
The thing is, you sat there on the config thing, and you got Pro there, and you got like whatever it is, 400 quid extra for the Max chip, and you looking between the two. You might as well go, because like as we always say, buying a new Mac, this is going to last years, right? This is going to last forever, so you might as well you might as well spend the money.
Yeah,
The whole thing
isn't the upgrade from 16 to 32 400 quid or something ridiculous?
It is 400 quid.
Oh my! Yeah. Now that's where Apple get you.
Oh no, is it? No, maybe it's not. No, it's not. But if you want to go to 64, it's 400 quid.
Okay, so
I think it was maybe two. I think this was maybe 200, and I think maybe the processor wasn't all that bad.
Okay, so if I want,
but you see, I would have gone 64 gigs, just because it's like, why wouldn't you? But 400 quid's quite a lot, and another 400, I think, for another terabyte of SSD, which I wouldn't have minded doing. But then you tick both those boxes and you put another 800 quid on it, and suddenly that feels wrong, doesn't it? So, because you're already at 3,000 quid, you see.
Yeah, it's another £400 to go from 16 to 32 gigs of memory.
Is it really?
Yep.
Yeah, but you've got to do that. I think
you keep convincing yourself.
You have to.
Okay, Tony. Important question: do you do 3D rendering?
Well, no, but I run Unity.
Is Unity
too
quite a hog?
Well, it's Unity, isn't it? And sometimes I run two Unities, an Xcode, a Rider editor. So sometimes Photoshop's open as well, and all sorts of stuff. About 50 browser tabs open, So, you got to look to the future, haven't you? I mean, if your car broke down really badly and they said, oh, it's going to be fine, 400 quid, you'd go, well. And that's just a repair, isn't it? That's just like, that's not even 4 new tyres on a car, is it?
So there's actually 2 configurations of the M1 Max. I'm literally going through the dream machine here as we're talking. So there's a 24-core GPU variant on top of the 10-core CPU. Or if you pay a little bit more, and when I say little in Apple terms, £200 more, you get a 32-core GPU. Which one did you go for? Was it the 24 or 32?
The cheap one, the base Mac.
The cheap one. Oh dear.
The thing is, you laugh, James, but the thing is, if you look at the power on these machines, what they're actually beating, the amount of money you have to previously spend to get this level of performance. I mean, it's pretty much a Mac Pro in a $3,000 laptop now, and the Mac Pros were whatever they were, 10,000 quid. So
absolutely you can't. It's not Apple for the power.
It's not like it's incremental. It's not like the next Intel or something like that. It's way beyond anything like that. I mean, this is a new thing. This is a new technology. It's a new era almost. It's so far in advance. If you look at what people are saying that have got them that are doing comparisons, it's way forward, So
yeah, it looks like unless you've got a high-powered desktop Windows machine, that's the only thing that can really rival and get better than it. But then you're talking like dedicated GPUs rather than a system on a chip design.
And not something that you can carry around and uses barely any wattage,
No, exactly. So I've briefly looked at some of the early reviews of this, and they're all saying it looks fantastic, it's powerful, it's everything we'd hoped, it feels like a pro machine, the display is beautiful, etc, etc, etc. So I am sure you're going to be very, very happy with it, Tony. But it's an investment, but that will last you, no doubt, for years.
It should do a job. I mean, there's lots of ways to justify it, Imagine you're a taxi driver, what kind of car are you going to get for 3,000 quid? Your main tool is your car, right? If you're a taxi driver, a 3,000 quid car, what does that get you?
Gets you from A to B.
Well, it doesn't get you much, though, does it?
But this will get you to A to B, to C, Uber, and everywhere else.
The last Uber I caught in London was a Mercedes E-Class, value about 50,000 quid.
Is that where you can say on the Uber, "Oh yes, I'd like something a little bit more comfortable"?
Well, it was about 1 a.m, and there was the streets were deserted, so anything would have done.
Okay, fair enough. Roller skates will be the next.
Yeah. Well, speaking of taxis, I mean, I've got a lot of taxis in Ukraine, and 3,000 quid would get you quite a lot compared to the machines that are running over there as taxis. So Soviet era sort of death traps, held together with string.
Now, I think we've done well because we haven't mentioned the elephant in the room. And I'm not talking about your pink microphone. I am talking about the notch. So I must admit, when I first saw this, I thought, tick, yep, tick, HDMI, tick, MagSafe, tick, beautiful screen, tick, keyboard, no touch bar, tick. This is looking good. Notch. I mean, given the screen's going right up to the edge of the bezel, and if you look at what you would normally have there, I mean, on this machine now, there's a blue. It's just blue. You always have the top menu bar thing on a Mac anyway, and you have icons coming across from the right, and you have menu stuff coming across from the left, and there's 5 inches of gap even on this MacBook Pro here, so it's space that's
it's dead pixels anyway, so I don't think it's really a problem. I mean, it's not nearly as jarring as it is on a phone, to be honest. And I think at some point they're going to have to address the notch on the phones. But even on the phone, you get used to it, you know.
Yeah, my wife has an iPhone,
I never.
And you get used to it.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue much on the Mac. I think people making a fuss about that are just looking for something to be upset about. But yeah, I don't think that's the problem.
It would never work on Windows. The Mac's lucky because it has that bar along the top. So they can kind of blend it in with the bar. Except for when you want to go to full screen with an app, in which case it just seems to all sit under that camera.
Yeah, I never do that anyway. But I mean, I imagine there's going to be a lot of wallpapers in there with black, with a very black top. So then you'll never notice it anyway. I think the only disappointment with that is that there's no Face ID on it, because that would have been useful.
Now that does make me think that maybe originally they thought they were going to do Face ID, but then maybe component shortage, maybe lack of time, etc., etc. It didn't get put into this generation.
I mean, what's in there? I think it's just the webcam, isn't it? In which case they could have done a punch through like on so many Android phones. So yeah, don't know. Yeah, it's possible that there is some speculation that they tried to do Face ID and couldn't get the sensors into the width of the or rather the depth of the lid, maybe. So maybe there was a plan, but Apple. I mean, there isn't. These things are designed so far in advance that I think if that was the case, they either would or wouldn't have done the notch. I think they're just happy having the notch. It's their thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The issue is on the phones to me, not on the MacBook so much.
Because the screen on the phone is far smaller, so the notch is taking up definite real estate.
Yeah, although even then, not much. It was, and you soon get used to it. But it's not space that's. It was bezel at one point, and now it's cut through. So it's not that bad. I mean, they will have to fix it. It's the one thing that Android has done nicely is the way they're handling cut throughs and stuff. But
yeah, it's.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that one.
Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you. I must admit though, I'm still not a fan of the notch. I'm intrigued to see how it sits with people after months of use, because I think initial gut reaction for a lot of people will be, oh, why did they do the notch? Everything else seemed perfect, and then we've got this distraction of a notch. If only as a discussion point, even if it doesn't bother you when you get the thing. It just seems a shame. They got everything else right, but they had to put this blinking notch in.
But it depends how you think about it. I mean, the screen has grown around the notch. It's not like the notch has... You don't think of the notch as coming into the notch hasn't appeared and taken away. It's like the screen has grown up around the notch.
Yeah, that's Apple marketing, Tony.
That's the way to think about it.
Yeah, the notch didn't encroach anything. The screen is actually rising, and it's the best notched screen we've ever made.
The pixels have grown up around it.
That's it, yeah.
Like the tide coming in, and the notch is like a sandcastle that's.
It's like sitting with Johnny
Ive.
The
water.
Well, Tony Ive, when is your MacBook due?
Well, it was meant to be like the 10th of November, but it's like yesterday. It's come through as the 1st of November, so next Monday it should come.
And I think the only rant you had on Twitter recently was about a payment problem.
Do I rant on Twitter?
What was that Facebook group that Aaron was talking about in the last one? But you're not a member.
Grumpy.
Yeah.
Grumpy. Well, it was too grumpy for me.
Yeah.
That's why I left that.
We all had a little rant on Twitter. I think that's why a lot of people actually. Yeah. I know people. I've got friends who will literally never use Twitter. They'll not read Twitter until they want to at a company and just have a go at them about something. That literally is the only time they'll use it.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with that. I mean, if you're going to try and get some resolution out of some faceless corporation, then to do it in public is the way to do it, because they don't like that, and the teams that deal with Twitter tend to have more power than just the people on the end of the telephone who are somewhere, God knows where, being paid $1 a week to deal with ridiculous.
But you nearly didn't get your MacBook
issues. Well, I was always going to get it, but I mean, what annoyed? Yeah, I mean, it's just MBNA. They're just fools, you know. So you might as well have a go at them.
So what exactly happened then?
Corporations.
For those who don't follow you on Twitter.
Well, I mean, they didn't do anything. They just. I said, how stupid is MBNA? And they said, oh, we're so sorry about this. Why don't you ring this number? And I said, it's too late. You know, I've already switched payment thing, because I rang them. I mean, first of all, I tried to do it properly and ring them up and say. And then you spend half an hour going through the press 1 for this, press 2 for that. We'll be with you soon. And would you like to do it with a robot? And
your call is important to us.
Yeah, well, it's not really. It doesn't seem. But eventually, you get through to a real person, and you say, you know, why have you done this? And it's the usual stuff about fraud, you know, and because the person you talk to doesn't have any power to do anything. So I said, well, are you gonna allow it? Because here I am telling you that it's a genuine transaction, you know. So just fix it. To which they say, oh, we can't do it. We have to put you through to the fraud department. Well, you have to tell them that you want to allow this transaction, but that's going to be 3/4 of an hour. You've already been there half an hour to get to this point. So, you know, is it reasonable to spend an hour and a half or more on the phone to MBNA just to get them to process a transaction? I think not. So what I thought, no, you can get stuff. What I'll do is I'll ring up Apple and switch the transaction to switch their payment to a different credit card, you know. So then I ring up Apple, and surprisingly that started off quite bad as well, because they have some robo thing who they reckon is brilliant, but I found a route through the robo thing to get to a real person quite quickly. Then I was speaking to someone very, very distant, who then got cut off before we could fix the thing. So then I got back to I ended up back with the robot. This time, the same trick I'd used to convince the robots to put me through to a human didn't work, and it took me twice as long to get through that system. So, I mean, that was a very disappointing Apple experience. But then I got through to a very nice lady somewhere who fixed the whole thing really quickly, and it even told me that the transaction, the whole thing would go through much quicker, and watch the page for updates, because they're running, you know, at least a week faster than what the estimates are. So I mean, Apple in the end saved the day, you know, because they were able to do what I needed them to do, and because they must have millions of people whose cards have been declined by this and that credit card company. You know, they must be ready for fielding all the calls from people like me whose credit card companies are
not helpful,
assuming that everyone is a criminal, you know.
It does seem to be the Apple Store, though, where these fraudulent transactions happen, because I think it was a few months ago, my credit card provider sent me a text message to say, someone has tried to spend £99 at an Apple Store. And I'm working at home while this text message comes in. I'm thinking, I haven't got anything reoccurring. Nothing will be scheduled. So I quickly checked this iTunes accounts and stuff to see if I had anything set for £99. And I didn't think I had, and guess what? I hadn't. So it was definitely a fraudulent transaction. And I thought, God bless them. They've gone to the Apple Store and they must have brought the cheapest thing they have there for £99. But at least I got the text message to say, is this the issue or not? So I just said no. And they said, oh, we'll be in touch with you within 5 minutes. And within 5 minutes, I was speaking to somebody and had to change my credit card.
That's the way to do it, isn't it? You just ask the person if they want the transaction or not. Is it real? You know, MB&A, they just go, oh, we don't like the look of this, we'll just stop it, and we're not going to tell anybody. We'll just stop it, and then there'll be some car crash scenario at the other end of the thing. But the consumer, our customer, with the credit card can work that out themselves. Really shoddy, really shoddy. So anyway, I had to go at them in public just because you can, really. It there was no outcome from it, and it's a waste of energy, really. But why not hurt them when you can? Complain in public.
Fair enough. But it does. Go on.
I'm quite a relaxed person, but generally, but corporations that do stupid things really annoys me. Highways England, I don't like them.
Go on.
Because we have. Well, I won't labour the point. We have like £500 million worth of infrastructure projects happening literally on our doorstep here, and occasionally they do very foolish things in the middle of the night, and then lie about it the next day. So Twitter is the way to avenge these crimes. Yorkshire Water, I don't like them either, because they're an illegal monopoly. They're an illegal monopoly, so if I can wind them up a bit, I will do. But apart from this, I'm easygoing, as you know.
Absolutely. And you like Apple, though?
I do like Apple. Good. And speaking of Apple, I mean, the reason that they get all the fraud is because these are such desirable products, James, that if you happen to come across a credit card that isn't yours, then you're always going to head straight to Apple.
Look, just because I'm going to speak about Windows 11 next and my experiences with it, I should inform our viewers and listeners that I do actually have 2 MacBook Pros. The fact they're both from 2013 is probably going back a bit now. I do have a Mac Mini from 2014, which I purchased second hand, and that was just to act as like a Plex server. So I only purchased that maybe a year and a half ago. And that one's great, just being on constantly and being nice and quiet and handling all my videos and photos and music, all just from one little box, which is hidden away, doing its thing, which today I upgraded to macOS Monterey.
Did you do that today?
I did. I don't even know if it's finished.
Just from the prompt.
So using my MacBook Pro from 2013, I did the whole screen share thing. So I could. Well, it's one thing I do actually like about having a Mac and connecting to another Apple device. If you're in that Apple ecosystem, if it's the phone, if it's the laptop, or it's another device, they work typically so well with each other. They go that extra step, and you do feel the benefit. So I'm able to go from my MacBook Pro and say, oh, there's my Plex Mac Mini, select it. Okay, now I can see the screen and interact and control the device. So there's actually no keyboard or mouse connected to the Mac Mini. It's literally just sat there as a box with hard drives plugged in. No HDMI out. It's just, everything's just acting literally as a Plex server. So if I'm watching on a Chromecast or something else, that's the visual display, that's the control. It's basically acting as like a little server. And that's it. So just going in, viewing the screen from my MacBook Pro, I was able to trigger the update for it. I haven't looked at it since to finish it off and make sure it's all working, but I'm sure it is. So I can check that after this podcast. But it's just nice to be able to do that. But yeah, 2 MacBook Pros from 2013. I'm a little bit behind on Apple technology. I was all invested at one point, but about the time of iPhone 6S, I moved away. Made the great move, pure genius move, of getting the Samsung Galaxy Note 7. Which is the one that had a bit of a reputation for this could explode.
Yeah, you had to hand it over as you got onto an airplane, didn't you?
That was not a good day for Samsung, having big posters at airports saying, if you have a Note 7, you may not be able to board this plane. And
well, they used to take it off you and put it in a foot thick metal box, didn't they?
Oh, man.
In case it exploded in midair.
Yeah, what a mess.
It was slightly overdone, wasn't it? But and then of course people held out, didn't they? But Samsung remotely screwed the machines over, stopped them working.
Well, the best thing
So
was, yeah, exactly. They did keep them working. But the best thing is I didn't get the original batch, which they recalled. It was then the second batch, which they went to all the trouble of, they changed, I can't remember now exactly what it was, but they changed some of the UI. Maybe it was the battery icon on the status bar. So someone looking at an airport could see the battery was a different colour. Or on the box of the phone, there was like a symbol on it, so you knew this was the second batch. This is the one that's fixed the battery problem. And guess what? They had another battery problem different from the first one. And that was the batch I had. That had to be recalled. But yeah, there were people who kept the phone for as long as they could until Samsung went, no, cutting you off.
I suppose you could you not have flashed it with stock Android and got yourself away from Samsung's control? You'd have thought you would, wouldn't you?
There's maybe some clever people out there who's done that, but I think no one really wanted to encourage that. It is a.
But that's what you can do with an Android phone, though, isn't it? You can wipe it and put stock Android on it, supposedly. Depends
on the model of phone, depends on the people and the community supporting that phone. I don't think anyone had the will to support the Note 7. Everyone saw the fact of, this is a phone that's serious concern. You do not want this near you. I mean, I was gutted. I loved the Note 7. So when I had to send that back, it was like tragedy.
Yeah. I mean, I quite like Samsungs. If I was going to buy, go back. I mean, at one point I was going Apple, Android. I haven't swapped back in a while now. I guess I probably won't now. But I used to swap Android when I was developing on Android. I used to swap between the two. And yeah, I quite like the Galaxy phones. They're always quite decent, aren't they? And the Pixel phones as well.
The newest Pixel phone, the Pixel 6, looks very nice. The camera notch is super big, if you can even call it a notch. Because it's not a notch, so let me rephrase that. There's a bump around the back. We call it the camera bump. And this is a particularly hefty bump, which looks more like Geordi from Star Trek TNG's visor. It's rather big.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it looks good in all ways, apart from that camera thing. I mean, you had a pretty sustained attack on my MacBook's notch. So I think I'll throw it back at you with that Pixel camera ridge. Has been not a great design win by any. I mean, the square things on the iPhone. I mean, they're quite. I mean, that's okay. I mean, that looks good.
But can you believe? I mean, I haven't had a Note for a while. This is the S21 Ultra. And I got the case where you could put the pen on the side. So if this phone wasn't big enough already, it really feels big now.
Yeah, but that looks cool. You see, I mean, that looks quite techy, doesn't it? There's cameras.
10 times optical zoom is amazing.
It looks good. It looks fine. But I don't think those new Pixels will look good. I mean, I guess you put a case on it and forget about it. But other than that, I mean, I've always had a soft spot for Google phones. I mean, I've run a few in the past. Quite nice things.
I think if you're interested in stock Android rather than, I mean, Samsung, for example, they put their own skin on it and UI. So you've got like a core Google experience and they'll think, okay, we're going to do this slightly different because where Samsung will maybe add a feature or two, which sometimes is ahead of where stock Android is at, which is good. But then sometimes they take things away, which is not so good. But it's Samsung's take on it, definitely. But if you want stock Google, I think Pixel 6, unlike the 5 and the 4 before it, is actually looking like an appealing option for those fans. And a decent
looks
price.
All right. I would go that way. Yeah, the price seems okay. Although it's not like, you remember the Nexuses? I mean, they were really cheap, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were almost free. It's like you just couldn't help. You just couldn't help but get one. I mean, happy memories of those things. I mean, that's all gone, isn't it? But I mean, these ones are a bit cheaper, aren't they?
I think the cheapest starts at 600.
Yeah, presumably you can get a pretty good Android phone for that money, though, like a One Plus or something strange like that. I mean, there's a lot of, down from the Galaxies. There's a lot of pretty good value phones, aren't there, with pretty high spec.
But I think the Google one is the camera. So for that price, to have such a good camera, That's going to be tough. OnePlus, their phones, I'm not sure about recently. I don't follow it as close as I used to, but certainly when I was looking at phones a couple of years ago, OnePlus always seemed quite a bit behind the true flagships, which, okay, they're cheaper, it's fine. But I use the camera functionality on a phone a lot.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah.
It's nice to have a really good camera, which is probably why I went ridiculous on this one.
Yeah, I mean, the camera is everything for me as well. So, the iPhone cameras are pretty good. I have a top. I haven't got the current one. I skipped, given this autumn's vast Apple expense, I've actually skipped the phones this year, but which took some doing.
So
took some willpower.
So what is your regular pattern for phones traditionally? As in, how often do you upgrade?
Usually once a year.
Oh, right, okay. So do you have a 2-year contract and sell and get SIM card only?
No, I keep them completely separate. I mean, I buy the phones, and the thing about Apple is you'll get half of it back. So if you're upgrading every year, your previous year's phone is worth half what the new one is going to be. So your £1,000 phone is a £500 phone if you're going to swap it every year, so which kind of sweetens it a little bit. I mean, it's unnecessary, but if you're so into these things that you're one of the people that does change your phone every year just to have the latest, then it can be done a little bit cheaper. It's not a grand a year,
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a bit silly.
I used to change mine every year, and that's because I worked at a company that would sell mobile phone cases. Well, there was a clue. The company I worked for was called Mobile Fun. I wasn't going to name drop, but there we go. mobilefun.co.uk for anyone's listening. And they sell mobile phone cases and covers and screen protectors, card chargers and all that. And I worked there as a copywriter and worked my way up to products manager. And while we were there, we would need the real devices. And we'd use those real devices to take photography, do YouTube videos, test compatibility, to make sure screen protectors were good, etc., etc. And the best thing was we got to try all these new devices. So it was like, I didn't have to go to a shop to see if the newest Samsung phone was as good as the newest OnePlus phone, Sony, etc., etc. And it was a rather wonderful experience to try all these different devices. And unfortunately, it was also a bit of a curse, because then it would entice me that this phone is so much better than last year's. I need this phone. And once you've used something like that, it's really, you can plead ignorance now. I work at a different company now, and I don't get to try the newest devices. So it's probably saved me quite a considerable amount of money in the end by not having this hands-on with all these devices and getting excited about it. But it used to be a yearly endeavour of changing my phone, but now it's probably every 3 years, maybe a little bit more. So I tend to have a splurge every few years, but I don't change every year now.
Very sensible. Yeah.
But I also think phone technology is not rapidly progressing as fast as it did a number of years ago.
That's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, I suppose that's the case. What are they putting? I mean, yeah, it's mostly cameras, isn't it? I mean, the screens get better, don't they, and things like that.
I think the big push at the minute is refresh rate of the screen, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the big thing, isn't it? I mean, what my last Pixel phone did was it used to have the OLED screen, and it used to have the always on display with the battery and the time, and it used to listen for music as well. You remember it used to tell you whatever song it could hear. It used to look it up and tell you the name, what music was on, and like Shazam, but like automatic. I mean, that was just fantastic. And I'm still, that was 3 or 4 years ago. I'm still waiting for Apple to do something like that. So they've got space to add functionality, which they could do any old time. But I guess now they've got that refresh thing on the latest phones, and they could do that any old time, because they could, they can pull the refresh right down to 24 frames a second or something, which uses a lot less power. And then it's OLED, so you're only paying for the pixels that are lit, and they could do all sorts of that home screen. So that would be, if Apple came along with that and said this is our new thing, then I'd be going, ooh, that's offering a lot, over my current one, which doesn't do it. So I'd be going, that looks nice, that looks good. But they always, it's all presentation, isn't it? But they always look good. It always looks like it's something you want.
Absolutely.
I wasn't going to go for this year's one because I knew I was going to be spending money on other stuff. But even then, it was like, it was like Frodo's ring. It was like talking to me. It was like
precious.
It was like a voice. It was like a voice saying, you really do need this. You have to lock it, and you have to lock it away and ignore it. And hopefully it'll go away and leave you in peace.
My M1 Max.
And keep you away.
My precious.
And then you have MB&A going, no, just say no. We'll stop it.
Don't worry, you'll be stroking your escape key before you know it. With no help from MB&A on this occasion. But yeah.
Well, yeah.
But anyway.
No one could stop me on that one.
Definitely not. No, you'd made your mind up. That's what you were going to do. By hook or by crook.
And I did it.
So Windows 11.
Oh yeah, go on then.
This is my.
Now, didn't they say? Didn't they say just before you tell us how great it is? Didn't they say? I distinctly remember this, and I do follow Microsoft stuff still. They said Windows 10 was the latest number. It was the last number.
It was the last
and
version of
all they were going to
Windows.
do from then on was, and they were just going to keep patching it to stop it being so buggy and hackery, yeah. But then now here we are, Windows 11. So what's changed there?
Well, I think it comes back to that age-old thing, marketing. How can you promote something new and say it's Windows 10?
Do they need to promote it though? They
I think so.
Microsoft are their Azure servers, aren't they? And Office licenses to corporations. They're not really making any money out of Windows, are they anymore? It's just a legacy thing for them.
For businesses,
some unloved in some unloved department in a warehouse somewhere in Seattle.
Well, for the people, think of the big corporations buying thousands of licenses for Windows, and that's where their money is. I don't think the consumer space, in terms of people buying Windows, is like what it was. Not by any stretch of the imagination.
Do you still have to pay?
Yeah.
Is it not free these days?
The upgrades are free. But, if you...
So if I build a new machine from nothing, I have to pay them for Windows 11?
Yes.
Goodness me.
It's a revelation. Yes, you still have to buy Windows. But the upgrades are free, which didn't always used to be the case.
Right.
I think Windows 8,
Windows 12 will be free.
Windows 12 will be free, yes. Yeah, we've announced it here first, folks. But likely is it will be free. But I think Windows 8 was like a £25 upgrade, I think, if I remember correctly. And then Windows 10 was free. Windows 11 is free. But there's been multiple versions of Windows 10. And there's not been major features released in that time, but there's been some nice feature progression, shall we say. But Windows 11 is quite a dramatic change just by the UI interface, the way it looks now. It's not Windows 10 in the sense of, it's curvier, it's nicer on the eyes, it actually seems much more consistent in terms of UI. It's still not completely consistent. You can still dig down the rabbit hole far enough and still find a legacy pop-up that just looks completely wrong. But it definitely feels like a new OS from the skin of it. It's like I've spent £30 and found one of those, I don't know if they're still about now, there used to be a thing called Windows blinds. And it used to basically theme how Windows looks, and it would give it different colours and made it look more 3D and so on and so forth. But it's like that with brass knobs on, really. And that's Windows 11. It's mostly UI stuff. I'm sure there's other stuff going on behind the scenes, as it were, that I can't remember right now. But it's all about UI. Certainly when anyone sees Windows 11, it's UI.
So presumably forgive me if I'm wrong, but it goes in cycles where they break the start menu and then they fix the start menu, and they break the start menu and then they fix the start menu. Is this a fix cycle?
I think if you think back to Windows 8, they got rid of the whole start menu idea and they went to the start screen. So the start menu was gone completely in Windows 8 until Windows 8.1, and they brought it back in a fashion. But no, the start icon was gone, and you had to hover down right into the corner, and then you'd see it just just show you that there was a hint of you can click here, and then it was open the start screen. And that was Windows 8. But thankfully, Windows 10 corrected a lot of that. Microsoft went way too far being scared of things like the iPad in trying to cater for these devices that were going to be replacing the PC, which never did.
No.
I mean, we look at the iPad Pros now, and they're certainly much more sophisticated than they were back then. But I think it's a hard sell for a professional to say, use an iPad.
Yeah, I mean, I have an Air 4, and I have the keyboard cover thing for it, and I'm writing my book on the iPad, and it's pretty good for that, and I mean, you're not doing anything pro, you're not developing anything, but I'm still making content. So, but it's just I like the compactness of it, and the fact that there's not other stuff going on. I find it less distracting to write on the iPad. So, and I can take it out and sit outside with it and all sorts of things. So, I mean, it's great for some things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for pro users, writing software and compiling things, it'll never be any good for that. But it's an interesting middle way, and great for drawing. My wife draws using the pen and stuff like that. It's great they're great things for many users. But yeah, it's not taken over, has it? It's just another thing.
Absolutely. I'm sure Apple don't mind. Buy the MacBook and buy an iPad. I'm sure that will suit them down to a T. But to be fair, when it comes
at the other end,
yeah. But when it comes to tablets, Apple's untouchable. Android's not been able to. Samsung's released some really nice Android tablets, but you don't see them selling as well or getting the sort of notoriety an iPad gets. The apps are there.
Yeah.
You can't. The iPad App Store obliterates the Android Google Store for actual tablet-specific apps.
Yeah, and there's some pretty good stuff. I mean, in the art field, there's some pretty sophisticated stuff now. The Adobe stuff and Procreate and those things. It's not bad stuff. It's using the processor, which is equivalent of what main machines we were using a few years ago.
Yeah, well, if you get the iPad Pros now, it's got the M1 chip in it.
Yeah. So it's like a workstation.
Yeah, it's got the power. I just think the UI hasn't quite caught up with the power yet. But maybe they'll keep adding little bits here and there. I don't think they should make it too like a macOS or a laptop, but still give users just a little bit more.
How far though? This is a very difficult one. I mean, there's a whole field of thought, isn't there? If that's the term, saying they should open the file system up and all sorts of things like that. But once you can browse the the file directory and move files around manually and stuff, which you kind of can almost, but not completely at the moment. Once you can do that, then it becomes just another computer, doesn't it? And then it's even more confusing because it'll be like a Mac, but not a Mac. It'll be like 3/4 of a Mac. Maybe that's the wrong way to go. Maybe they're right to hold back from that. I don't know. I bet they have some really difficult conversations over at Apple as to which way they should go with it, because there's no right answer. I think maybe they've got it right as it is, and a Mac is a Mac, and an iPad should never go too far into the world of files and stuff.
I think Apple kind of shot themselves in the foot when they were trying to sell it as this is your next computer. And it depends on everyone's perception of what a computer actually is. And it doesn't need to be a computer. It's quite comfortable in its own product category as it is. It's a great device for those who are looking for that kind of thing. And there's plenty of people that want a non-complicated, high-powered, featured device like an iPad. They don't want a computer, but there's plenty of people who do.
I think that's probably right. I think they probably pitched it about where it should be. Keep it simple, and then it's its own thing, isn't it? And let it be authentic, and let it have the confidence to be itself, rather than feeling insecure next to a real Mac. I
mean, I remember them, not Apple specifically, but the press sort of trying to figure out the future for Apple devices, and the iPad Pro, it's spelling the end to the MacBooks. They've not updated it in a while, and it never materialized. And it's just the same sort of knee-jerk reaction Microsoft had by doing Windows 8. It just went too far, trying to be a new device category that wasn't there yet and hasn't really materialized.
Microsoft got really confused, didn't they? More than Apple, really. I mean, they kind of panicked and made some very bad decisions.
Yeah. And it's funny how you said it was like the start button that would be fixed and broke. So we already said Windows 8, it was gone, never mind broken. Windows 10, fixed, great. But they still had the legacy of, you still had the tiles if you wanted them there. I always actually removed them in the end. I stopped using the tiles after a while. It didn't become as useful without it being sort of a full screen thing. Windows 11 hasn't broken the start menu, but it has shifted its position. So if you think right back to Windows 95, the start button to trigger the menu was always in the lower left corner of your screen. That was just the way it was done. Now, Windows 11, by default, it's all centered. So the Windows start button is at the far left of your row of icons. So the problem with that is if I only have 5 icons in that bottom bar, the start icon or button is just a little bit to the left of the center of the screen. But let's say I'm a bit more of a power user and I'm opening and closing apps throughout the day. That start button is moving left and right. It's not staying in any static position.
Okay.
So you can't even use muscle memory to find the start button anymore because it's moving left to right depending on what apps you have open. You add another app, it's moving that little bit to the left, and you open another one, it's moving a little bit more to the left. Not too much of a problem for me because I pin a lot of my favorite apps and I tend to just stick with those apps so it doesn't shift around too much, which is fine. And I do actually like this centered approach because it actually makes me think macOS actually. It's easier to find what you're looking for right bang in the center of the screen. Fine. But the start icon and button moving a little around a bit, it's just it's a bit weird.
But you know what's coming. Windows 12, they'll fix that.
Yeah, it'll literally be the centermost icon. Which actually surprises me. They didn't do that in some ways. I'm guessing they were thinking, well, when you open an icon, where the hell is it going to go? Is it going to go to the right or is it going to the left? Is it going to alternate? But it would seem like a natural thing, ignoring the fact of open apps and things, to have it right bang in the center rather than just moving on that left-hand side, left and right, depending on your open apps.
You have to be careful with this stuff because people don't like change, do they? So, I mean, you want everyone to upgrade, but if there's any negatives, people will resist, won't they? I'm sure there are people out there running. I don't know, Vista still.
Oh, I hope not. Vista wasn't one of the better ones. Windows 7 maybe.
Yeah, well, my father. I mean, he will never do it. He'll wait until his computer breaks, and then he's forced to get the latest Windows. I mean, I'm the opposite. I'll go great, new thing, get it installed, see what it's like, But I know a lot of Windows users, they'll be scared of an upgrade, and potentially with good reason.
Well, the good news is you can shift it all over to the left-hand side of Windows traditional.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
So it's just by
fine.
default, it's centered. But then you've got to go hunting for the setting. Are people always going to be hunting for the setting? That's the thing.
You have to know it's there, don't you? If you have to hunt for it.
Yeah. Thankfully, it is there. That would have been pretty criminal if they didn't. But I've been quite happy with it centered. But like I say, I pin my apps so they don't actually jostle around too much.
I'll tell you what my big thing with Windows is, and I have been using Windows 10 a bit recently because I had to look at a project that was on the it was Windows only. So I do have one sat on my desk there, and what I cannot get my head around is the fact that you're stuck on one desktop still. Why don't they let you have multiple desktops? So your Photoshop is on desktop 3, and your browser is on desktop 2, and it flips between different nice clean spaces rather than 1,000 different windows all layered up on one the only desktop. I mean Linux did this years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Why does Windows still not do it? And I think you can get some add-on that will do it for you in a not quite working way, but surely it should be a thing.
Good news, Tony.
Why isn't it a thing?
Windows 11 literally has an icon specifically to have multiple desktops.
Does it? And it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Works like a charm.
Right.
Send back your Mac.
Yeah. Cancel. It's too late. It's too late.
Do you know, I am completely operating system agnostic. I will use Windows as like my desktop machine, mostly because I'm a gamer. If you're a gamer, you use Windows and a dedicated GPU, and away you go. macOS on my laptop, I use quite happily. I think it's a great laptop OS. It works for me. Does 99% of what I want. Great. Linux, I'll even use Linux. But I tend to use those on lower powered stuff. But I use all three, and they all have the purpose. It's not like a Windows fanboy or anything.
I tease you a lot about this, but I don't mind Windows. I mean, I haven't used it seriously for many a year, but booting it back up again, it takes you 5 minutes, and you're back into it. It all seems quite. It's almost like I can't see the difference. I mean, there are huge differences between the way Windows and macOS work, but I can switch between Windows and the Mac machine, and I can't. I don't think of them as being different things. It's a strange thing. It just seems completely natural. Whichever one you're on is that you know how it works, and you just do it that way. It's not a problem.
Well, it's funny.
I do like what I like about the Mac. What I like about the Mac is that you can drop it down to a Linux command line, which is what it really is underneath. There's something quite pure and nice about that.
I do like that.
Which is what gives it an edge.
I do like that.
It does give it the edge, and it gives it an edge in my view. But yeah.
So interesting you say that, because my wife has always used Windows. She's never used macOS. But ironically, her Windows laptop was playing up. When she flew over to the UK, she had a laptop in a bag, and I think it got crushed. So it works, but it's getting terribly hot, and it's only a matter of time before it fails. And I've already tried to get a battery replacement for it, and it's just not happening. So I said, okay, this is why I've got 2 MacBook Pros from 2013. So I said, okay, fun enough, on my MacBook Pro, I have got Windows on it as well as macOS. So you'll feel right at home. You can use that, and we'll think of something long term. Great. So she went off and used that. But Windows on a Mac, although it runs natively, is just not optimized, because Apple, they're not that interested in creating really optimized drivers. And the graphics works, the mouses work, the keyboards work, etc., etc. It's just like the power efficiency stuff. It will get hot. The fans will be really kicking in. It's the battery power will reduce a lot quicker. It's things like that where it's just not as fine-tuned as macOS. But then it's not in Apple's best interest to get it fine-tuned. But even plugged in, the fans go like crazy. So I said, okay,
right,
it's getting really hot. That's going to deteriorate the battery even quicker. Why don't you try macOS and just see how you get on with it? Because they are very similar. There's just these little quirks. And she didn't know if she wanted to try it because she's very busy. She's like, I've got to learn something new. It could take days. I've got all this work to do, etc., etc. But I convinced her, and in literally hours, I walked into the room to see how she was getting on with it. And she had multiple windows open. Dual monitor was going fine. She had Facebook Messenger going on. The apps I'd installed, she'd found and was having open and running and having communications and surfing the web and moving files around. I thought, well, okay, there's a testament. I mean, she's certainly not stupid with technology, but she certainly is a technology enthusiast where, you know, she's really delighted to try new things. She wants to use what she knows and just get the job done. It's a function. She just wants to get it to do what she needs to do. But within literally a few hours, she was really good with it. And she only asked a few questions, like the main one was, how do I copy and paste? Because she was expecting it to be Control and C, when actually on a Mac it's Windows. That's be hilarious. Apple and C, or Command and C. Yeah. So if there's any testament showing how alike they are nowadays, it's examples like that.
Yeah. Well, she really is your better half then, if she's macOS now.
I'm not going to deny that. I'm never going to deny that. She's always my better half. But she's getting on really well with macOS, so now she'll probably stick with it forever. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, so you'll be buying a MacBook Air very, very shortly.
That's how we can. Do you know? I'm determined to make those MacBook Pros from 2013 last as long as possible. I'm literally going to get the battery replaced in the second one I've got. I did the other one probably about a year and a half ago, so I'll probably get another few years out of both of them, and then
they're SSDs, are they?
Yeah. Well, it was literally the first generation of when the Retina display became a thing.
Okay.
And
both
of them
they'll run forever.
Yeah, and I remember my first screen in it because it had to be replaced. It did have ghosting. It would look beautiful in Retina because it was the first generation, but I did notice ghosting that once I had a window there for a little while, if I moved it, I could still see an impression of it there for a number of seconds after. But, you know, it's first generation. But then a few years later, I had to get the battery replaced. I got the little warning. And Apple said, oh, I can see the screen coating's deteriorated at the top. And it was like the very smallest bit. I'd hardly even noticed it. We're going to change the screen for you. Oh, thank you very much. And then all the ghosting had gone. So whatever was the screen 4 years later, I basically got in that device as the replacement, which was great. So the screen is top notch. There's no ghosting or anything. And the other MacBook Pro I've got, that had a screen replaced as well for the same issue. And that really had the coating problem bad. All over the screen, it had really been affected. So that screen was replaced for free. So...
Well, yeah. Custom service, you see. I mean, they're expensive machines, but they last a long time, and they'll fix them if they're badly failing from a warranty point of view.
Indeed, but I can't get the latest updates of macOS now. I've been considered.
Oh, really?
I'm vintage.
But the mini has done.
Yeah, so that's a 2014 one. So probably the next one they'll say no. But you know, that's a long number of years.
It is actually in computer years. It's a long time, isn't it?
So it's hard to complain too much.
Support this stuff. Yeah, and you don't really need. It's not like you need it. I mean, you'll upgrade the thing to Monterey, and you won't see any difference. You know, it'll be that they're often. It's often a massive anticlimax. You know, everyone. It's like waiting for the latest Apple macOS, and you install it, and it takes 2 or 3 hours, and it comes back up, and it's exactly the same as the last one.
Yeah. Well, is there any killer feature in the next macOS you can think of?
I don't remember anything much particularly exciting. Lots of weird sharing stuff you'll never use. What it will do is let an iPad be a proper slave window to the Mac, so you can literally drag things across between the two and stuff. I mean, that's going to be pretty interesting. I think it's not in the first version of Monterey. I think it's held back a bit because it's pretty complicated. But yeah, you'll literally be able to drag a file out of your Mac, like a PNG or something, across the screen onto the iPad and drop it in there and have Procreate open or something, you know. So that'll be, I mean, that's quite interesting and presumably quite difficult to do as well, given their different operating systems, you know. So, but that might be quite useful. I think I'll be able to find a use for that. So yeah, that was the main thing I remember, but not a right lot.
Well,
and the other good thing about macOS is it doesn't get bigger. You know, sometimes it gets smaller, which is testament to what they're doing with it. You know, it never bloats.
Well, this podcast is bloating. We're at 1 hour 10 minutes, so we've been waffling on for quite some time. So we probably ought to call it a day. So thank you for everybody listening to the Game and Gadget podcast, and we will see you next time.